I know the pregnancy brain is a thing, and sometimes hormones and stress can contribute to people being overly sensitive about things and overreacting as a result. I don't think that this has happened in this case, but I might just be too close to it all to see it for what it is. Hello everyone. I've been going through a really tough situation, and I'd really appreciate some calm, measured responses and maybe some advice from other mothers or expecting mothers who have maybe gone through similar things during their pregnancies with their in-laws or anyone else behaving like my sister-in-law has been. Some background. My husband and I recently relocated across the country, back to his hometown, thanks to an amazing job offer that he got here. It was with a company that he interned with, back when he was in high school, and they reached out after seeing one of his posts on LinkedIn. So it was super unexpected, but it really wasn't something that we wanted to turn down. Making this decision to move clear across the country while pregnant wasn't something that we took lightly, especially since we were moving away from my family, who's always been very involved in our lives. Ultimately, though, we thought it would be a chance for a fresh start as a new family, and it was just too good of an offer for his career in the long run. I was lucky enough to not have much trouble finding a job in the new city. I work in healthcare. Well, we decided to move before I had the baby. We figured it would be easier to have me take it a little easy now than it would be to plan and execute a cross-country move with a newborn. With the last few weeks of my pregnancy just creeping up, I'm grateful that we moved when we did. I definitely would not want to be packing up a house in this state, and I wouldn't say it's been a difficult pregnancy given some of the horror stories I've read here, but it definitely has not been a walk in the park either. I'm not super comfortable disclosing my medical information here, and I don't really think it's relevant, so I'll skip over the details for now, but let me know if you feel I should provide some more context in the comments. Anyways, on to the important bit. Moving back to his hometown meant moving closer to his family. We've never been particularly close to his side of the family. They obviously attend the wedding and everything, but considering the fact that we lived on the other side of the country, we didn't see each other much. My husband, who I'll refer to as Harlan, fake name, for simplicity's sake, never expressed any interest in heading home for the holidays or anything like that. So, we didn't really have much interaction other than a phone call on birthdays and maybe some cards exchanged on the holidays. He wasn't really close to his family when I met him either. According to him, his parents were a bit controlling when he was growing up, and his sister was quite clingy. So, he went to college really far away to gain some independence and ended up liking a lot, so he just never went back. When we met, he was already living in the city that I'm from, and despite growing up with a family that was very different, he slotted perfectly into mine. My parents and siblings all love him, so do my aunts and uncles and grandparents and siblings. He's much as part of the family as I am, and we've always been very close to them all. When we first started discussing the move, I brought up possibly trying to build that kind of relationship with his family. He seemed open to the idea since I think the years have given him enough space to want to revisit the relationship that he has with him. This is all to say that we moved here with open hearts in the hope of building a solid relationship with his family. I've always believed that it takes a village to raise a child, and considering we were leaving our village behind, we really wanted to form a new one. In fact, we ended up getting a place just a few streets down from his childhood home, where his parents still live. Harlan's parents have been really pleasant. They helped us unpack. His father, henceforward I'll refer to him as father-in-law, made sure that our lawn was taken care of before we moved in, and his mom, my mother-in-law, helped so much with decorating. Maybe if our decorating styles did not line up as much as they did, it would have been a problem, but seeing as mother-in-law and I surprisingly have similar styles when it comes to our houses, it just made everything a lot smoother. They've also been really supportive over the last week as I approached the beginning of my maternity leave by bringing over food and helping us clean up. We've tried to return the favor as much as we can, and Harlan takes their dogs with him on his morning run and has helped them with some heavy lifting that's been needed. From what I've seen, Harlan's been really enjoying rebuilding a relationship with him, this time as equals. There have been a couple of instances where their advice has erred on the side of pushy, but other than that, things have been going really well. This is where we got the real season I'm posting about this. You see, his sister Susie, also a fake name, has also been very present. She's 24 now, lives in an apartment about 15-minute drive away, and works as an elementary school teacher. She's obviously very close to her parents and seems to visit them every other day, or At least she has been ever since Harlan and I moved to town. She often tags along when mother-in-law comes over, and she's usually always present when Harlan and I pop over for dinner on Sunday brunch. It's clear that she wants to be just as involved as her parents have been, but her brand of involvement is a little bit different from theirs. When they were kids, Harlan told me that she tried to stick to him like glue. She used to follow him everywhere and wanted to be involved in everything that he did. At first, I figured that it was just regular little sibling behavior. My little brother was the same way with me, but he grew out of it once he started going to school and making his own friends. Only Harlan tells me that Susan never really grew out of it. Up until he moved out when he was 17, she would not let him do anything by himself without having a meltdown. Harlan also said that his parents never did anything about it, which is why he left home as soon as he did and why he never had a good relationship with them. She'd expect him to give her all of his time and attention, and they would stand by and allow it, often encouraging him to just give in to her demands. I know that she was a kid and he was older brother, but I can't discredit his experience in the fact that her behavior severely impacted his childhood. Now that she's an adult, we both hope that she would have matured past her behavior, especially since they've lived apart for so long. The good news is she does seem to have calmed down a bit about demanding his attention. Unfortunately, that seemed to have translated into her being obsessed with my pregnancy. Now, I only mention this because I feel it might be contributing to her behavior, but Susie's infertile and brings it up a lot. We're having a boy, and we've known this for a while, and we're not particularly concerned with keeping it a secret, so his family already knows. Ever since we moved here, Susie has been very vocal about wanting to be involved in the pregnancy. She wants all of the details of every appointment, and she wants to help with everything baby-related because she says that she'll never get to experience it on her own. Well, painting the nursery, she's there. Picking out a crib, she's already got a favorite that she thinks we need to get. Harlan and I started too gentle about rebuffing her considering the whole infertility thing, but lately I feel like she's almost been obsessed. I don't know how to describe it since on paper she seems just like a doting aunt, but it's the way she goes about it all. She needs to know everything. She's got several Pinterest boards of baby inspiration. She's already bought a bunch of outfits, and she keeps talking about getting a cart seat just to make sure that she can take him out on trips. She says that she's already decided on the preschool that he'll go to. The baby isn't even born yet. Well, this might also be a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but she's also been referring to the baby as her baby. Like, quote, "My baby should have his outfits made out of natural fabrics," and, quote, "My baby won't have any screen time because I'm going to raise him right." He's not her baby, he's mine and Harlan's baby. However, this seems to be slipping out of her mind lately. On the other hand, I really want to be involved in the extended family, like I would have back home with my side of the family. On the other hand, I just feel Susie is overstepping her boundaries a little bit, and I would like for her to back off. Mother-in-law and father-in-law have by and large been amazing, so I don't want to risk causing a rift between Harlan and his parents by making this an issue when they're just now starting to come back together. However, I feel like I cannot continue ignoring my sister-in-law's obsession with my baby. I just really appreciate some advice. Am I being too sensitive about this one? Please, let me know. Update number 1. It's been a while since my original post, so you might want to check that out on my profile before reading the update. It's been about 4 months since then, and I kind of forgot about the fact that I'd posted anything to begin with, thanks to how hectic having a newborn is. But there have been some developments that reminded me of the existence of this throwaway account, and I figured that maybe I'd get a little more advice from you guys. Firstly, the main development is the baby's here. It's been very exciting and a huge change overall, but a very welcoming change. Harlan and I both overjoyed to have our little boy here. He's very loved, and I'll make sure that he knows that. His grandparents on both sides have also been very excited about the addition to our family. My mom came down about a week before I was due and stayed for a month after to help me with the recovery, and my dad and brother flew over 2 weeks after our little boy arrived to visit and meet him. Harlan's parents obviously still live a few streets over, so they've been present throughout. My family has since returned home, so it's just Harlan and I along with our new addition to the house now. The issue comes in the form of my sister-in-law, Susie. If you read my original post, you already knew that I feel she was overstepping a little bit. But I ended up speaking to Harlan about it, and we decided to just be polite but firm on our stances. That ended up being tested shortly after, when a little before my due date, she started insisting on being in the delivery room. She started the same spiral about how she would never get to experience it, and she needed to be there to see her baby. I decided a long time ago that I only wanted my husband and mother in the room with me. I'm not really asking for any opinions on this, since I'm happy with my stance and everything, according to the plan. Susie was very unhappy with the arrangement. Harlan and I remained firm in our decision as discussed, so things went ahead as planned, but she continued to be difficult leading up into our delivery. Mother-in-law was initially too swept up in the excitement of the newborn baby to pay attention to Susie's complaints, but with it having been a couple of months, Susie seems to be getting through to her because she's made some comments to Harlan about letting Susie be more involved since she'll never get the chance to have her own kids. Well, we didn't take any visitors at the hospital since the delivery was in the middle of the night and we ended up being released later during that day. So mother-in-law, father-in-law, and Susie came over to meet my son at home. Honestly, I was just so swept up in the emotions that I did not notice anything that day. But my mother mentioned that Susie kept making comments about how my son looked exactly like Harlan, and how since she looked just like Harlan, he looked more like her son than my son. For context, I have really light hair and eyes, while Harlan has really dark hair and eyes. He's also quite a bit paler than I am, and our son seems to have taken after him quite a lot. After my mom mentioned that, I've noticed in every visit since that Susie makes constant comments about how my son looks nothing like me, and so much like her. Well, Harlan told her that he has my nose and smile a couple of times, but she constantly mentions how much he likes her and that he could be her baby. Mostly I've just ignored it, but recently I feel she crossed the line. She started calling my son Harvey, fake name also, which is something she used to call Harlan when they were kids, despite the fact that it's not his name. No one calls him that, and he never liked her calling him that. Harvey is somewhere near my son's name. It could not be considered a nickname in any universe either. Imagine his name is something along the lines of Benjamin, and she's calling him Harvey. Anyways, we've decided that we need to address this now before it goes any further, but I would love some advice. Please, tell me what to do. Update number 2. Hello everyone, I'm back with yet another update. First of all, thank you so much for all the comments and advice. They've been a great help in understanding different perspectives. I saw a comment about how Susie might be projecting the relationship she wanted with Harlan onto my son, and honestly, I think it might be true. However, I do think the infertility factors into it though, especially with her fixation on his resemblance to her side of the family. Regardless of her motivations, I feel like she really overstepped this time. I posted my last update around 2 months ago, so I've since gone back to work, which has been both horrible and wonderful. I love feeling as though my life still exists outside of being a mother, but I hate being away from Benjamin for really any period of time. I've been reassured that the separation anxiety gets better with time, but it's been brutal. Since Harlan and I both work, we obviously need childcare. We did have a nanny service in mind, but mother-in-law and father-in-law offered to have Benjamin at their place while we worked. They're both retired, so they have the time, and we all figured that being around their dogs would be good for his development since Harlan and I have both grown up with pets. Overall, mother-in-law and father-in-law have been great with Benji. But the only other problem, once again, is Susie. Now, Harlan and I know that she's been over a few times while Benjamin is with his grandparents to see him and spend some time with him, considering he's only a few months old and does not understand a word that she's saying about how much he looks like her. We haven't been too bothered by it. She does keep changing him into clothes that she buys, though. Today's issue is so much more serious, however. Harlan swung by his parents' place after work today to pick Benjamin up. Only Benjamin wasn't home. Mother-in-law and father-in-law had allowed Susie to take Benjamin on a trip to the zoo, without consulting either of us. Harlan was furious that they did not run it by us, especially considering how young Benjamin is and the fact that he is our son. He called me immediately and drove to the zoo on the spot to go and get Benjamin. He called Susie on the way and told her that, well, if they weren't waiting at the entrance the moment he arrived, she would never be allowed to see Benjamin ever again. Thankfully, she listened, and Harlan picked up Benjamin and came straight home. He assured me that I did not have to leave work early, that Benjamin was fine, and that he had it handled. But I was honestly so rattled that I called out and drove home right then and there. I get it if you think that the two of us are overreacting, but if anything, I feel like we're underreacting. We trusted mother-in-law and father-in-law to take care of Benjamin, and though he wasn't harmed, we still feel like it was a breach of our trust, just to allow Susie to take him without consulting us first. Update number 3. For once, it's only been a week since my update. This post won't be too long. The gist of it is that Harlan and I spoke to his parents about Susie. We expressed how we felt she was overstepping in a lot of instances, and how her comments about how Benjamin was actually meant to be her boy bothered us. So, at first, mother-in-law and father-in-law started defending Susie and trying to brush off her comments as harmless and just doting aunt, loving on her nephew. But when it became crystal clear that Harlan and I were holding firm in our stance on the matter, and that they could not spin it against us either, they shocked us by agreeing to get her and rein it in. They told us that they would handle it and that Harlan and I did not have to worry about Susie anymore. Then we brought up how we felt that we had broken our trust by letting Susie take Benjamin out without our permission. Even if they had asked us, we would not have been comfortable with our young son going out without us present. Father-in-law said that we were being overprotective and that, he had never been worried about his children when he was at work because he knew that mother-in-law would look after them. We told him that we would not worry either if we knew that mother-in-law and father-in-law were looking out for him. But we were absolutely going to be worried if we didn't know where Benjamin was, who he was with, and what he was doing. And that, frankly, neither of us wanted him to be alone with Susie. Mother-in-law, especially, really seemed to understand where we were coming from and promised to make sure that Benjamin stayed with them all time going forward. We brought up a possibility of looking into other childcare, but mother-in-law promised this is just a one-time thing. They now knew our boundaries and would make sure to respect them. That they knew how important it was for me to have a village and that they would do their best going forward to do just that. So, honestly, guys, going into the conversation, I was sure that we were going to walk out of there having to find a nanny. But mother-in-law seemed really genuine about everything that she said. Harlan and I discussed it privately, slept on it, and ultimately decided to take her word just this once. However, if there's ever a repeat incident, we won't be so quick to forgive. That said, we did have a new rule. Susie was not to be left with Benjamin unless one of us was present. That meant no more visiting him while we went there. She was free to visit her parents after we picked Benjamin up, which is always before dinner. If they felt like this was too much of an imposition, we would make alternatives for childcare arrangements. Update number 4. Guys, this is not going to be a short update. It's been another week since my last one, but all of this went down only 3 days later. On Monday earlier this week, I got off work early and decided to pick Benjamin up right away. The whole zoo situation happened on a Friday, so this was the first day that Benjamin was back with his grandparents, and I'll admit that I was feeling a little skittish about it. I really did mean to give mother-in-law a call before I arrived, but I ended up on a call with my mother and just simply lost track. This is not going to be good. It was Benjamin's nap time, so I was in no rush and wrapped up my call with my mother before heading inside. Immediately, things were weird. Mother-in-law was oddly skittish when I got there and insisted on going and getting Benjamin for me despite me saying that I would rather wait 10 minutes left of his nap than wake him by myself. She kept pushing for me to sit down while she went to get him, and every time I said I would just come to the nursery, she would almost panic and tell me to sit down and relax a bit instead. She was being really insistent that I not go and get him myself. My first thought was that maybe she was a bit annoyed and that I would come by unannounced, but her fixation on keeping me out of the nursery made me think that something else was at play. Father-in-law kept offering to make me some coffee, despite the fact that the man has never set foot in the kitchen before and trying to usher me into the kitchen to sit down and have some. My gut was telling me that something was wrong, so I pushed past them to the nursery. The moment I got to the hallway, mother-in-law blurted out that Susie's with Benjamin in the nursery and that they had not expected me to come over early. She further said that sister-in-law just wanted to see him for a bit. I was furious. I headed into the nursery immediately to get my son, but what I found was so much worse. Neither of them were there. No Benjamin, no Susie. Then it dawned on me that I had not even seen Susie's car outside and immediately assumed that mother-in-law had let Susie take Benjamin out again. But both of them seemed just as shocked as I was. I rounded on them immediately and demanded to know where my son was, but they insisted that they'd left both Susie and Benjamin in the nursery 20 minutes ago. I told them I was going to call the cops if they didn't see that my son was here in the next minute, and they both immediately started trying to call Susie. I called Harlan, obviously, and he drove over the moment he could. Susie didn't answer, and when we were nearing the 10-minute mark of no answer, I brought up calling the police again, and both mother-in-law and father-in-law were insistent that I should not do that. So they made a move to make my phone out of my hand, but I immediately left the house, locked myself in my car, and told them that if Susie wasn't back in the next 5 minutes, I was calling the cops. So I called Harlan again, and he agreed with my stance. They still could not get Susie, and I still didn't have my son. So I called the cops and reported my son missing and explained the situation. Well, they looked up Susie's license plates and put out a bolo. It took 2 hours to find her. Harlan arrived at that time, and the only thing that kept both of us from falling apart was our absolute fury at mother-in-law, father-in-law, and Susie. Thankfully, Benjamin was unharmed in the backseat of her car, which was packed with some sort of belongings and about a week's worth of baby supplies. Not that long has passed since all of this went down, and I'm honestly not sure what our next steps are going to be. What I do now is, I know that Harlan and I are never going to forgive this. Susie tried to actually kidnap her son and will face consequences for it. I don't really have much more to add to this, and I don't think that this is a post that I would have to revisit going forward, so for those of you who have followed along, thank you for your advice. Update number 5. This is the final update of the story. I know I said that I never wanted to revisit this post, but with everything settling down, I figured I owed some of you a bit of a closure. I don't want to go into too much detail on the legal side of things, but in short, Susie's facing the consequences of her actions. She's facing criminal charges. Kidnapping. She'll not be permitted to be anywhere near me, Harlan, or the baby for the foreseeable future. She's also obviously lost her job since no school in the world wants a kidnapper on its teaching staff. Susie, will absolutely just likely go to prison. The proceedings aren't complete yet, but the outcome is unlikely to change. I cannot muster any guilt or sadness about it. Throughout all of the proceedings, she maintained that she did nothing wrong, that she was just trying to be with her baby, and that she can't be convicted for kidnapping her own child. She's completely unwilling to accept the fact that Benjamin is not hers. And can you believe she blamed us for everything? Yeah, she clearly said that if we had not tried to stop her from meeting her own baby, she would have never needed to take him away. Let me know what you think.